Hi guys, welcome to a new episode of The Insecure Musician.
Goodbye, my friend, miss you. You don't look so good again. No.
I'm Mya Gomez and welcome back to another episode of The Insecure Musician. Today we had Anthony King, guitar player for Buffy Sainte Marie, and many others. Check it out. Come on.
All right. So, first things first, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing? Do we have enough light on me?
I don't know.
There you go. That's a little
Video
better.
is weird.
Yeah, but your background looks cool. You're all like red and mellow, and I'm all blue. It's like the sky over here.
Yeah, it's nice.
All right. Earth and sky.
There you go.
Perfect. Excellent.
Fire and water. Fire and water.
Ah, that's what I was looking for. Better. Lyricist. I get it.
Have you ever felt not good enough to be in music at any point in your life?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think these days it's even worse, because when I was coming up, and even when I was in my 30s and stuff, I would see, like one or two guitar players a month at a bar that blew me out of the water, and I'd be like, oh, see, I shouldn't be playing music, that guy. And then I learned a couple things. I learned that everybody on a certain level thinks that way when they hear the other guy, because they'd hear me and go, dude, no, those licks, because everyone's tired of their own stuff. But now it's even harder, and I definitely went through a period, 2014, 2015, I still live alone in LA now, but now Daphne's in my life, but I was coming home from gigs. Instagram was relatively new, or I was new to it anyway, and it's so bad. The exposure is so intense and so non-ending barrage of everyone sounds amazing. And at this point, I've finally getting to the point where mostly I feel like, well, I have my voice on the instrument. I maybe don't have as much chops as that guy, and maybe I'm not as lyrical as that guy, and maybe I can't write like this dude, or my tone isn't as good as that guy. So these sound like a lot of things, but they're actually way down from, I went through a dark period where I was just, oh, wow, everyone's great. Everyone's great. And everyone still is great. But it can really, coming up nowadays must be really tough for young musicians, because you're just inundated. They can either fuel you or you can make you shut down. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a different world.
You play for Buffy.
Right.
Buffy Sainte Marie. Woo! She's awesome. So what was it like getting that gig?
That's a fun story. I actually started on bass for the first 6 months. Went in, somebody had hit me up, a tour manager that I did a different tour with, and he's like, when you play bass on Sunday in San Diego for Buffy Sainte Marie, and I have to admit I was a dumb American. Like I knew her songs once I started learning about her, but she's not a household name down there, so I didn't really know who she was. And I learned the music. I went down there and I hit it off with the whole crew, especially the drummer Michel Bruyere, Money Dubonnaise, and we hung out till 3 a.m. and he was like, dude, I want you in this project. I'm like, please. And so the next thing I know, I was in Sweden with them playing music. And about 6 months in, the guitar player had a child, retired to do his TV. He does Strong Front TV, Jesse Green. It's a really, you probably know Strong Front, and out of Winnipeg. And a little plug there, Jesse. And Buffy knew that I played and had heard me. I played her some songs that I re-recorded, and she was like, oh, well, all right, we'll just have you play guitar. That'll be ample. And we got Mark and Kibbs, and we don't always have Kibbs, but you saw Kibbs with us at C&E. Yeah, and so it's been a 5+ year ride. It's been great. I enjoyed both chairs. I really, playing with a drummer like Michelle and playing bass is super fun because he's just this, like we talked about. Obviously, playing guitar with him is also great because when you're going off on a solo, he's just laying it down, and so there's never any question about where the pocket's at. But it was a really cool, it happened so organically. They were looking for somebody, and it was just the right fit, and it was so random. And now I'm married to a Canadian girl. Go figure. So I didn't go to Canada until I was 45.
You said that you weren't necessarily super familiar with Buffy. Like, you knew some of the songs or whatever. Do you find that kind of helped with any of those, like, maybe self-doubt thoughts at that point going into an audition? Like, went with the flow a little bit more?
That's really interesting. And also, it wasn't really an audition. It was like I was bailing them out on a gig. So I was going to be the guy that night, whether I was terrible or amazing. Because at that point, it was the 11th hour. We went to rehearse, and it was like, this is it. And when I started playing and looked at Michelle, the whole room was just like, oh, thank goodness. And then after the rehearsal, even Buffy was asking me if I had a passport. She liked it right away. And it was also, there was a really funny moment. I showed my ignorance, but it was also really cute and endearing because we were getting ready to play Up Where We Belong, and it just all hit me. And I go, did you write this song? And she goes, yeah. Most amazing thing ever. It was just this perfect moment of foot in mouth and and then I went, wait a minute. And I don't know why I didn't Google her before the gig. Like, usually you do that. You know, you get a gig, you don't know who it is. You get right on there. I don't know, I was in the middle of a 4-day run of gigs in LA playing country guitar, and I just didn't have time. I came home from my Friday night gig, and they had sent me all the tracks on a, Dropbox style thing, and I pulled them all down, and I kind of sat up at 2 a.m, just like, okay, this one's in G. And then I heard Look at the Facts, which became Carry It On, and I was like, oh, a lot of little changes in there, okay. And I have an extra ear on that. And then the next day I woke up, made coffee, wrote charts, did my Saturday night gig, loaded out, drove to San Diego, did the Sunday hit, got it. And that was like, I got the gig just by being on time, being a pro, being easy to work with, and ready to go. And I had so much fun playing with them at that gig. I was back with Michelle just jamming, and he was like, yeah, man, like, yeah, this is great. It was a good fit.
Oh yeah, you can definitely see that. So would you say that at the level that you're at, because you are such a session player, that you just kind of go? You don't have the time to necessarily think about, am I good enough for this? Am I not ready or whatever, just because you are always playing?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. No, those insecurities still creep up. Like I said, though, I've just gotten better at kind of keeping them at bay and being like, I just have my own voice, and people like what I do. And I mean, I don't do sessions for huge bigwigs, and I've gone on a few cattle calls in LA back in the day, like maybe kind of stopped doing it, especially once I got the Buffy gig. I was like, oh, cool, now I don't have to do that so much anymore. The most nerve-wracking one I went on was for Christina Aguilera, and the band was set up in a soundstage. Their setup is crazy. They've got Drum World on one side, and then the musical director plays keyboards. He's in the middle. His rig is like the size of the room you're in, and then the percussion world is on the other side. And they got background singers and the bass players over here. And, there's like 12 people. The drums and the percussion were both matching purple kits. Like, it was crazy town. What they did was they had 3 guitar amps set up, and they just looped one song. And when one guy would play, and then he would tear down, and the next guy would play, and they never stopped the music. And then you would take your pedal board and plug in and wait. And then when the guy next to you was done, you'd play and he'd leave. So they just had this rotation go on for like 70 guys. So everyone was in the room. Like, it's one thing when you go in and there's dudes looking through that little window. Who's that dude?
Yeah.
It's another thing when you got 70 of the best guys in LA and they're all like what you got, son? Needless to say, I did not get the gig, and I tried to watch her on Kimmel a few days later, and I was peering at the guitar player to see who did. You don't get a lot of screen time when Christina Aguilera is the singer. She's going to get most of the screen time. And her background singers. And of course, that's the gig. That was one of the most harrowing ones. That was a long way around to answer your question, but these days I don't know. I've got it down to where I have different clients that are kind of regular and then random people that send me tracks. So I get to work leisurely in this little room here and in my apartment in LA, guitar, bass, and acoustics, and or mandolin, like anything with a string. Well, not violin, certainly. So I can record at my own pace. I take my time with it, and I send them my finished product, and they chop it up and use it however they want. So it's pretty low pressure. And I used to go to jam nights all the time or host them. Those are fun and can be harrowing. It's at a place called Cantor's, which is a deli, and it's called the Kibitz Room. And if my buddy sees this interview, he's going to be like, yeah, you should go. He's always bugging me to go. And when I've gone, they know who I am, so they just hand me a guitar. And the thing about that jam is they never stop. They never stop playing. They play for like 3 hours. And they just go from song to song to song. But the level of guys that go there, like if they start playing any song, the guitar players or bass players or keyboard players, they just hear the right part, oh yeah, and they start playing it. Well, I'm more of the kind of player that, like, I don't know if it's a recall thing, because if I hear the record or recording, I'm like, oh yeah, I figure out in a second. But like when it's on the spot, I don't always hear exactly the part that's on the record. So then you got 2 guys on your right singing you the part, yelling it at you, and I'm like, well, if you can hear it, why don't you play it? And I just give them the guitar. So I kind of shy away definitely from, I would say that I'm right in the middle at really solid ears, but my strengths lie elsewhere. I'm not one of these dudes. I don't have perfect pitch. I wish, oh God, I don't know what I would do for perfect pitch, but I would do a lot. That would be neat, because then I wouldn't have to worry about anything ever. I could go on any gig and they could play any chord and I'd be like, oh, really? But I think it's knowing your strengths and weaknesses and not accepting them like, oh, I'm going to just not try anymore. No, I still practice all the time. I do warm-ups daily. One thing that I do a lot is I'll hear some idea and go, God, that was a cool way to play over that chord. And then I'll get home and I'll sit down and I'll go right to that song, and it might take me an hour to learn 32 seconds worth of music and how this guy got around that. Oh, there we go. I'm gonna put that in the little tricky things. It's not about accepting your limitations. It's rather about playing to your strengths. And mine are arranging and guitar orchestration. I mean, when I do a track, the ones that you've heard that I posted recently are actually a little light. They have about 10 guitar tracks on them. Sometimes I put 15 and they don't all sound at once, but they're coming in and out, and stereo this and that, and panning, and I love doing that. Super underrated Dean DeLeo, how he pans to things in stereo and doubles little things, and the tones he chooses. That kind of stuff is more where I'm about.
So would you say that curiosity is a bigger factor in music for you than perfection?
Yeah, perfection is terrible. Like the video I just posted today, if you watched it, the last solo, the bigger solo where I'm wearing sunglasses to be funny, it wasn't perfect, and there were some notes in there that I was like, I kind of clicked. You can't even tell. I can hear it. But I have really stopped. Yeah, I have really stopped with striving too hard. And if I dented a guitar or scratched it or dinged it, I used to get so bummed out when I was younger. Nowadays, it's just like, oh well, I don't want to break something, but if it functions and it has a ding on it, who cares? As long as it doesn't sound wrong, it's fine. And I think little imperfections, especially if I can get a whole take and not have to punch it or comp it, having a whole thought on a solo is extremely important, way more important to me. And I think I learned that early on from guys like Miles Davis. Like, if you listen to his solo on So What, on Kinda Blue, like there's a lot of little, there's some funny sounding stuff in there. But they probably listened to the whole thing and went, but the vibe is perfect.
Exactly. It tells a different story.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many songs like that for me where it's like, yeah, but like that little quiver in the voice just like told exactly how that person was feeling. Oh, yeah. Just, and certain choices too.
Yep. I
I
have an interesting story about that too. I wrote a song and sang it, and it was for, I had a nephew that didn't make it. He was premature. It's sad, sorry, but the story is I wrote this song for him and I recorded a scratch vocal so that I could track the drums and the acoustic and everything against that part and to do the vocal. And I started singing and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be able to do. There was something like you said. There was this like, I sounded like I was going to cry a couple times, and it wasn't the best vocal in the world, but it had, and it was fresh. The wound was fresh. There was no way I was going to replace it. I was like, nah, I'm not touching it. And the producer at first, he was like, come on, man, we got a better mic. We got to use this. We're going to do that. It's going to sound so much better. But I convinced him. After like 10 minutes, I said, all right, I'll give a couple takes. And then I did a pass or two, and we just kept A-Bing. And after a while, he just sat back and he went, you were in the moment then. The wound was new. Like you had just, he goes, yeah, that's it. That's what we're using. I'm like, yeah, can't touch it. It's perfection. So
yeah. Everyone's always so concerned about sounding like perfect. There's a difference between perfect and like wrong. It's like flat out like.
Certainly.
But everyone's so concerned about sounding perfect that like it loses any kind of like identity.
You don't get
sometimes.
any. There's no pizzazz. There's like you said, if it's wrong, I play a wrong note. Well, yeah, I'm gonna have to fix that note.
Like when you first started, were you more comfortable, recording, or were you more comfortable live? What like was your like insecurity in music?
Yeah, I don't know. I look back on how I was back then. I was young, so I was just full of swagger. I got schooled a lot by guys and thought I wasn't good enough or as good as this dude or that dude. But at the end of the day, I just didn't care, and I just went for it. To this day, I was never really good at taking stuff off records and perfectly reproducing it like some of my friends could, and they would always get those jobs in cover bands, but I never really wanted to do that. What I always wanted to do was sit with a bass player and a drummer and just start a groove, create it from nowhere. That was always my thing, and I did that endlessly for hours. And I think that's more. I mean, it's always great to play songs, and if you do cover a song like an Eagles song or a Petty song, you gotta play those parts that those guys played because they're amazing. But I was also taught by one of my early music teachers that what you do is I would play all of Mike Campbell's entire solo, the whole thing, note for note, and then I would go off maybe 4 more times around the chord progression with my shit, and then I would cue the ending. And I was taught that by my high school music teacher, Doug Burris. He always said, like, if you're gonna play a song by so-and-so, you have to tip your hat to that guy first or girl, and then you get to say what you want to say, even if you just play the first few licks of their solo. And so I've always loved improvising, and so I started recording early on, but it was never like session stuff. It was just me and my buddy Mark doing like Frank Zappa style ridiculousness. So it would be like a bossa nova, and then it would be metal, and then it would turn into like a blues song. And we would do that, all mash that up into one track, 10 minutes long with funny lyrics. I'll have to send you some. It's quite silly and adventurous, and that's where our heads were at. But I've been recording ever since then. So I got my Pro Tools rig about 12 years ago or more. So I've always had some way to track, and I love it. But live performing, I'll never want to stop doing it. It's so fun, and the larger audiences are great, but they're kind of abstract. Favorite is probably just a regular size bar, where it's just kind of more interaction with the people, and you're jamming out and you're having some fun. I wanted to talk about this when we were sitting down to do the show, or when we were talking about doing this. I thought, I got a really good talking point. I have one buddy who's hyper insecure about live performing, but he's an amazing songwriter. But he sees the crowds, that he sees the pictures of us with Buffy. You know, we'll do the selfie with the audience, or somebody will take a picture of me playing, and you can see the whole crowd, 20,000 people in somewhere in Toronto or in Australia, and he's like, dude, that would cripple me. I don't know how you do it. And I was like, actually, dude, it's so much easier than playing at like the hotel cafe when there's 12 people and you can hear a freaking pin drop or a pick drop. You're like, So between songs, it's just deathly quiet. You hear the clanking of glasses and people coughing, and they're just right there. That's nice guitar. When you're on
Or
a
you
stage,
can see when you hit a weird note and they go,
oh, that's terrible. And when you're on the stage with 20,000 people and a rail, everybody's way. It's just so far away.
yeah.
I mean, I don't get nervous with those shows. I don't. But if I have to play with like if you and I are playing at a small club, at the hotel cafe, it's a perfect example. You're in there, and there's 50 people, and they're all just at these little round tables right in front of you. Woo! That drives me nuts. Like, it doesn't scare me to the point where I'm apoplectic or, I can't function, but it definitely
it's just
is.
Uncomfortable. There's
Oh,
not
it's
like
so uncomfortable. Thank you.
for sure. One of the last shows that I played, it was like it was nice. It was a great show, but it was also like kind of weird because they're all just sitting at these tables and it feels like this like super classy event, and I'm just like, I'm up here in like black eyeliner, like talking about how I want to die, and you're all just like, that's nice. Like, I don't know. That's
like,
always a weird one.
I'll have the fillet.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Oh.
And also, it's when you have a whole band, I don't know. I just feel like it's so much easier to go on stage. That's why I've never really been a front man. I'm not the strongest singer. I'm pretty good at harmonies and stuff. But if I had started singing early on, which I kick myself for, that's definitely one thing I wish I had done, was just started singing lead on more songs when I was a youngster, because then I just got used to doing it more. My strength now is definitely also, like we say about people like Buffy, and if I was working with you, my job is to make you sound great. That's my whole job. So when you're not singing, I'm gonna do a little thing. Hey, yeah, see, and I just get out of the way of the vocals, play for the song, serve the music, and that's it. It's the craft. You have to honor it.
Yeah.
That's what I really enjoy doing.
There are a lot of guitar players that don't necessarily think that way. I think that it takes a lot of ownership of your skill, and also knowing that you are serving, and it's actually more confident to be able to serve the song. When something goes wrong on stage or in a studio, is it easier to let that like kind of go off your back and just like
that depends on how bad it is and what it is. I have had situations with Buffy where I've had to unplug from my pedal board and go right into the amps, and that's fine. I can do any gig with a guitar, a cable, and an amp. It's more fun, and I have more color palette if I have all my little tricks on the pedal board. The short answer is I handle that with varying degrees of success. I booked a gig, even though I was landing at 6 p.m. The gig was at 9. So I'm at home. I got time, and I closed the suitcase handle, and I gave myself a blood blister on this finger. And that's my main bending finger. So I got really, 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 really mad. I slammed my phone down and cracked the screen. It's fixed now. Then I go to my car, and my car won't start because I've been away for 3 weeks. I have a downbeat in less than an hour, and my car won't start. So now I am starting to just go downhill. I've broken my phone, cracked my screen. So I walk back into my open air, my apartment, and there's a grill outside. My neighbor's cooking. He's an Australian guy. And I go, Roger. And then I was like, now my car won't start. And he goes, hands me the keys to his BMW. He goes, here you go, mate. Just be careful when you're driving. Take my car. And I was like, you are unbelievable, brother. So I drove around back. I threw all my crap in his car and got to the club. And now my pedal board is just screwing up all night. I thought it was my pedal board. I found out before the last set of a long night that it was actually the front of stage power that was messed up. And if I would have just plugged it in the back, that was messing with my headspace so bad. So I had a hurt finger, and now my pedal board was totally messing up on me all night long. That was really hard to navigate. Now, it wasn't a big deal because I'm just playing at a club. I wasn't I wasn't in front of 10,000 people playing a show that people paid money to go see. And that I just had a terrible night until finally it solved the whole issue. And I was just like, I just want this day to be over. For me, every other day is a level of, wow, I'm really flowing today. Like, those days when you drive and you catch all the green lights and you get to Starbucks and there's no one in line. And then when you leave, there's like 13 people. You're like, ah! It's one of those days. I have those days playing, and I'm sure you do too. Like, you go into the gig and you can't hit a wrong note. Like, the band sounds great. Everything's amazing. You're like, why can't every night be like this? Well, it can't, because then we wouldn't know, so that we know the good from the bad. If it was always good, we'd get really bored really fast. The stress level of them depends on what it is. If I got to go on play on CBCQ and something's wrong 2 minutes before they're going to turn the red light on, yeah, that's going to be high stress. If I'm not feeling like recording, or my computer crashes and I got to do a track for a client who's like, yeah, just get it to me within the next week, well, that's pretty low stress.
Be hard on yourself enough so that you fix the problem, but don't be so hard on yourself that you, don't move forward, don't complete, don't whatever that is, right?
One of the best artists I ever worked for is this guy, Mark Seliger. He's the black and white picture of Cobain on the cover of Rolling Stone is Mark Seliger. Amazing songwriter. And I played for him in New York years ago, and we were doing this really cool show at this bar. But someone goes, oh, it's too bright with the scrim, man. You're supposed to bring your dark shirt. And what happened was, nobody in his crew, and he has a large crew of people that help him with his photography and his music, and they were just like, oh yeah, no problem, where's the shirt? I said, it's hanging in my room at his complex over on the West Side Highway there, by my airbed. And they're like, no problem, do sound check, it'll be here when you're done. And nobody placed blame, nobody got mad. And when I did see things go wrong in that organization, they always used language like, yeah, we don't want this to happen again. What can we do? They never said you. Nobody ever would place blame on anything. And it was one of the best run outfits I've ever worked for. And everybody was so cool. It was really cool to see the way they handled stuff, because it was always about, let's solve the problem. This just doesn't help. Like, just don't stop yelling. Let's fix the problem, and then we'll figure it, and then we'll worry about why did it go wrong, what happened, and how do we not let that happen again. Stevie Ray Vaughan did a double tour with Jeff Beck. I've always had this weird thing that sometimes I think I'm sucking, but I'll get a big reaction after a solo, and I'll be like, that solo was shite. What is going on? And then other times I'm like, I'm on fire. And then later, like, some bandmate will be like, yeah, you sounded good. I've heard you sound better. And I'm like, wait, what? And so Jeff Beck and Stevie Ray Vaughan talked about that exact thing happening to them night after night on the tour. You can't ever really know. Like, first of all, how many people go to see the same movie, and some people are moved to tears and other people walked out? So, but it's the same with like performing. So sometimes it's indisputable, but in the day-to-day, work-a-day, like you're doing gigs, you're writing, you're out there hustling, you might think it's crap, and you might really move somebody. People would come up to me and go, man, you sounded great. And I'd be like, you should have been here last night. And I would just kind of bleed on all over them. Like, nah. And so one day I did that to somebody, and they walked away. And this older cat that was on the gig with me, he was a bass player, and he goes, wow, that was pretty lame, huh? And I was like, oh, no, that guy was cool. He goes, no, you were lame. I was like, what? And he goes, well, that guy was clearly moved by what you did, and you talked him out of it. You basically told him his opinion isn't worth it, and that he was wrong about hearing what he heard from you that he thought was great. who are you to take that away from him? And I was like, what? He goes, do me a favor. Just say thank you for the next 6 months and see what happens. And I was like, all right, I'll give it a go. So for the first 3 months, it was like, thank you. Ah! And then he would leave. I was like, frickin'. And then after a while, this miraculous thing happened. One, I said thank you, and I meant it so genuinely. And number two, it would just create this whole great experience with this person. I'd be like, hey, what's your name? All of a sudden, we're having this great interchange, and then it's like, all right, well, take care. I hope to see you again. And it actually made my experience of playing better. It made the post experience better. It made meeting people better. It changed everything. And it was just one piece of advice from one cat who was like, wow, you're kind of a dick. He was right.
You shared that with me, like one of the first hangouts, and I was like, that is the most helpful thing I have heard. It definitely helped me even, so thank you. And I'm sure it will help anybody who watches it.
Good one, man. You just have to be great. You have to be graceful. You have to be gracious, and really somebody could be moved by something. I mean, and I've even gotten the weirdest compliments of my playing, like, wow, you sounded like Alex Lifeson. I'm like, I love Alex Lifeson, but we were just playing a country song. How the fuck did I sound like the guy from Rush? Okay, if that's what you heard, awesome. Not going to take that away from you.
We allow negative things to be more valid for whatever reason than like positive, just because it validates your own fears. And it's terrible. It's awful. But it is funny that like you feel like you need to be validated in all the negativity for it to be like real for you, right? Instead of just allowing the positivity to come at you and just like embracing
that
it.
Can play into all the self-sabotaging and like, I'm not good. See, I knew I wasn't good enough, and fear of success crap. Yeah. Fear of success used to plague me because I thought, well, if I really hit it, then I'm going to be asked to go into situations where I won't know what's going to happen. And I'm not a control freak by any stretch, but that is still like a fear that I'll be on some giant stage and they'll go into some song that's complex and then I look like a chump because that's happened, it's in my career, and something starts happening and I'm like, what key are we in? What are you guys doing? And they're like, come on, you can hear it. I'm like, not at this moment, no.
Could you communicate it, please? I don't know.
Just give me the key, please, and I'll be fine.
It's that fear of like, there's so much further to fall. But with all the fear comes like really great experiences. And I think that, we don't give ourselves enough credit for how hard we work. Generally, through all of it. Right?
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you for doing this with me.
Oh man, that was great.
Thanks for lending your voice.
Yeah.